Picture.
That's my gloss.
The sounds.
Yeah.
Text, yeah.
How are you?
So we fully.
Oh my goodness, I didn't
The
just
owl
notice
is
that.
watching you.
Thank you very much.
It's called an
What's
owl.
that?
It is called an owl, apparently. It looks the same on this side as well. Have you got two lights on that side as well?
Yes.
And what about facing that way?
What it does is it captures everything. It's 360 degrees.
It's got two eyes, it's got two pairs of eyes.
That's
Two pairs, right. Like a spider.
You can do it on screen one day.
Yeah, exactly. Really? See that?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
There we go, just in time. So Japanese manufacturing methodology, just in time.
Well, where are you? And total quality.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Right. Here we go.
Abby's lost. Abby was on coming to this meeting.
Yeah, she
Can
was.
she sit at the table?
She should really sit on now. She didn't even do it. She didn't hear it.
Well, you got one. You went that way.
Oh, okay.
She's just come past.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, she,
She can
so
do
we
it.
can help, yeah, exactly, yeah,
I'm proposing to bring that forward.
okay,
I'm having it up in the
okay.
straight up.
Yeah, yeah.
So she can leave.
I can speak up.
Okay, 6:30. No, we'll see French.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome, councillors, members of the public and others, officers, to this meeting of the Finance and General Purposes Committee. Wednesday, the 18th of December. Could I just say at the beginning that we've got Abby Taylor, Chair of Folk and Ale, is here to speak under item number 9. I'm proposing we bring that forward in the agenda so Abby doesn't have to sit through the whole of the meeting.
I'd like to second
So have it straight after public participation, if that's okay. So agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So first of all, apologies for absence received.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have Councillor Breen has a travel commitment and Councillor Tomlins has an illness.
Item 2, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted. Do we have any? Nothing? Thank you. Item 3 is minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 20th of November. To receive and approve those minutes and consider any matters arising. Shall I take this page by page? Page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. So we're happy to receive and approve those. Happy to propose.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favour? So those are received and approved. Item 4 is public participation. This is a chance for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of business on the agenda. Do we have any
No request.
request? Okay, so in that case, we shall move on to item 9, which is discussion of potential non-financial support for the Folk and Ale Festival. And we're very pleased to have Abby Taylor, who's the chair of the Folk and Ale. Do you want to come up to the table?
Talk to the back of everybody.
So we can talk to you.
Thank you.
So we had a discussion at the last meeting about fees for the forecourt, etc. And I think we all recognise how important all of these events are for the town, for the health and vitality in business and prosperity, etc. But I think, Abby, you wanted to talk to us about how we can help you in a non-financial sense.
So the first thing I wanted to do was just say we still haven't had confirmation of our booking for the forecourt, and obviously we do need that in order we can go ahead and start setting up contracts with our vendors and our entertainment groups. So
Yeah, it was with the fees being reviewed, but I am in the process of that.
So on the subject of fees, am I safe to assume that we will fall into the community event bucket, therefore, for the Folk and Ale Festival next year?
I think we're all agreed that will be the case, because what we're just clarifying at the moment is whether SCEA
Yes.
needs to become or can become a CIC or a CIO or a registered charity, and to act as an umbrella organisation for the main events,
Yes.
including Folk and Ale. And if that's the case, then that will happen. But I think in any event, we'll probably need a year of transition.
Yes.
During which time the 4 key events, I think, unless I'm mistaken, will continue to receive.
What we agreed was a 12-month dispensation for a number of named events. So that's where we are today. So I wouldn't want to, in terms of process, jump ahead of that, because we are only a committee.
Yes.
And it has to be an STC decision, so we have to take that to STC.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No, I fully understand.
Ideally, we would have
But for
decided.
me,
already.
obviously, from a
Yes, I
budgetary point of view, there's a
Yeah.
significant difference.
Yeah,
I think it's likely, but
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
And the only other thing was, and I know again, it's not necessarily a subject for this committee, but whether I can confirm that although we received funding from the Tollbridge Fund in 24, whether our request will be heard in March for 25 funding. Obviously, the applications and any forms have been filled in. I just want to make sure that we're slated on the
Yes.
agenda.
So where we are with that, because it's an STBF finance committee issues to start with, but then we'll go to the full STBF. We haven't agreed the budget for that yet. Grants are only one element of the full package. And for example, worst case scenario, if we can't award any grants, then we will not take people through a process if we can't award grants. If we are going to award grants, then we need to know how much we're dealing with. So it's a little bit ahead of the curve.
It is. I just want to make sure that we're on that
Yeah,
March
but in
agenda.
terms of the process, March is the first touch point in terms of grant applications.
So obviously, as I've spoken at the previous 2 full council meetings, funding for all festivals is an issue. We've lost DVC and KCC grants this year, and obviously we rely heavily on local business sponsorship. In the current financial situation, unsurprisingly, we're expecting that to be lower than previous years. So we're having to kind of think, I don't want to say outside the box, but sort of certainly think differently. So as much as fundraising, it's not very much a cost-cutting exercise this year for us. So the sorts of things that would really help us out, the first one on my list is free electricity. I'll let that land. But I'd like, and again, I presume all of this would be minuted so that council can, and I understand you're not able to give decisions now, but just to have those conversations. Toilet, and just to say as well, that's, a previous year's precedent, so that's not anything different to what we've had previously. So that's not a new request, actually, that's the same request as we've always had. As is keeping the toilets open later. Obviously, if we can reduce the amount of portable toilets that we need to provide, it helps us out. So having those facilities open longer is a big benefit. And in addition to that, because we're not going to be using the quayside in 2025, we want to request permission to access the ground floor toilets of the Guildhall, because we won't have accessible toilets otherwise. And that's obviously something critical to providing for the festival. Gazebos, again, that's something we've had previously, so just confirmation that we can do that again. And then the new request really is the tables and chairs. It's a huge expense. It's about £1,100 we pay in table and chair hire. And there's a Guildhall, beautiful place here, full of tables and chairs. So that's the main one for me, is if we can access that resource, we're firstly going to save ourselves a lot of money, and also have much more secure storage for those items overnight, because we can take them from the Guildhall and return them to the Guildhall. So those are my 5 headlines. If anybody can think of anything else that the council could potentially provide in a non-financial way that would help the festival out, I am all ears.
So the tables and chairs in the lock-up, the round
So I think
tables
we
and the
use those
plastic-
anyway, but it's actually, I noticed you have quite a large stock of,
long.
yeah.
The long ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The plastic.
Obviously they need to be weatherproof, but they are plastic, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing was that, so on that particular aspect, how many are you talking about?
I need to go back and look at, we used Canterbury Catering hire last year, so I'd need to go back and look at what number of units that was.
I think we'd need to, Mr. Chairman, we've got to be very careful about making any commitments,
Yes.
because obviously whatever we agree to yourself, any other event organisation come knocking on our door and request the same items. So if we make a precedent with yourself, we can't get out of supplying the same items to other event organisers as well. And just recently, we've had an STBF meeting. The sort of financial situation is difficult, let's post it like that. And I think everybody's got to understand that, you know, that as well as the events being difficult to put on because of funding, running a very, very large building like this with the number of staff we've got is very difficult as well. And if it becomes a decision between laying off staff or having events, then we'll have to draw the line somewhere.
And so I hear what you're saying. The only thing I would say in response to that is that the whole point of today's conversation was ways that the council could help us without having any financial impact on any of the funds. And I think the new paradigm that you're using for Guildhall charges almost sets the demarcation for me. So if you fall into a community or a charity event bucket, then you should have access to the, should we call them freebies? If you're paying £300, you can afford to buy your own tables and chairs.
And I would say that we can, from my perspective, and I note the mayor's comments, but you know, just as equally with us 16 councillors, other councillors could say actually we want to have bespoke, depending on the event's concerned. So what I'm not trying to do personally today is make any decision. It's actually about gathering the information from you to allow us as a group, which will have to be a full STBF, to eventually make the right decision.
So let me,
make a decision.
so I'll take an action to get the Canterbury contract out from last time and actually see how many units it was. And that will help for starters. It could be a fraction of your stock. You may be sitting on loads of plastic furniture, I don't know.
For instance, the out of hours working and that, we didn't realise previously the property manager that we've now employed in previous years, none of that was costed up of what it was costing the council and thereby costing the public. And it's our duty to make sure that the public's money is spent correctly. So just to explain the situation to everybody, if for your event we have to employ somebody for an extra 8 hours after their normal hours, that cost has to be found from somewhere.
So why would that be the case? Because obviously we're 100% unpaid volunteer run festival, and our volunteers do all of the the grafting,
I'm
as far
not
as I'm
sure, you
aware.
said you wanted the Guildhall open after.
Just the
Ground
toilets.
floor,
Yeah,
yeah.
even-
Somebody's got to
Somebody-
undertake that, so we've got to employ somebody to undertake that. Don't
So
know if
this
So I-
evening, the door's open?
Yeah, so I think the thing is, Abby, if there's activity within the Guildhall
Right.
on a set
that's
any given day,
that's-
then there has to be staff.
Yeah.
Right,
Now, if Folk&Ale is the only activity, then actually there's an additional cost to the council as a result, directly as a result of
Right.
Folk&Ale. So I don't even know, it might have to be open for a wedding, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like
that's
that.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, so the only thing to say is that we finish the outdoor activity normally by about 7:30, so it's not
extremely.
extremely late, yeah, and then everything normally moves into the pubs.
It's just also, I don't know if you're aware, and the members of the public that might be watching this, but the Guildhall, similar to Spa and the Co-op, we've been suffering a large amount of antisocial behaviour. So we're now, for evenings, we're now employing separate security detail.
So we will be employing our own security, and I've already got a meeting with DDC to discuss event safety, so
Yeah.
that's definitely in hand.
But to
tomorrow.
protect the Guildhall and the property within the Guildhall,
Yeah,
if it was open particularly for an event, we would have to employ somebody to cover that event with the Guildhall being open.
and that wouldn't, you don't think that the security that we would be employing would suffice?
Well, your security would have a detail. All security are briefed at the start of any event, and I've done events management. So they're briefed at the beginning of the event. Your security will be briefed for your event. They won't have the keys or the briefing to protect the Guildhall or our property. So if something happens on our property, our security detail know exactly where to go and what to do to turn off water, to set, turn off the electrics, to do things like that. So, but all I'm saying is there's not a blanket policy that everything will be okay. Your security can cover our property and things like that.
Do you
So
use an external organisation?
we do.
Well, we'll be using an external
Yeah.
organisation, I'm sure there's some,
Yeah. But I just wanted to explain the
Synergy.
situation that the
Yeah.
council's in,
Yeah.
because in the past, there's somebody here that worked here called Kevin Cook, and he used to do excessive hours off his own back, and I think everybody needs to know that that's no longer available. So,
I think, I've been a volunteer at Folk&Ale, and, lug the chairs and tables from there to here and back again. And I'm sure that will carry on, whether it's from there or from here.
yeah.
But I think we need to check on the dates and whether the Guildhall's open anyway. And
Yeah, this,
I think the key thing, we want to be as helpful as
Yeah.
possible. We don't
Yeah.
want to be negative. too
no,
negative,
no.
because these events are important. So I think what would be helpful, having heard what you said, is if you put in writing
Yeah.
your precise
Yes.
requirements,
Yeah.
dates,
Yeah.
times, etc., and then perhaps write to the town clerk, and then perhaps have a meeting with the committee or yourself and the property manager, just to talk about the logistics.
Yeah, no problem.
So if that helps.
yeah, I think that takes us a step forward.
I think
That's the important thing.
It's much better to sit down and just
Yeah.
do this and
Exactly.
talk, isn't it? Than,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
Anything else you need from me? Obviously, you've got my email, Colin, you've got my phone number, so if anybody needs anything, just drop me a line.
Who's the headline this year?
So, so I managed to procure a band called Wickenwood for one night, and I'm trying my hardest to get AD Scruffs, who are a Bristol-based band, but obviously with finances being quite tight, we're wrangling a little bit over fees. But yeah, some new acts, which hopefully,
Great.
you know,
Great.
Good. All right, thanks.
brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
That's right. Man down.
You can have that one.
well, no, it's probably worth it, right? Yeah, I'm not bothered. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Okay, thanks for that. So now we move on to item 5, which is payment schedules and finances. Now, these come to FGP in order that we can give them more scrutiny, so that we don't have to go through the details of council, because council has delegated that job to us. So I propose we take each of these in turn, starting with 5A, which is attachment 2A, which is the payments schedule approvals. So 2A, first of all, is there anything on there which you wish to comment on or highlight? No?
I'm surprised it costs £800 for the gardening at Bay Hall, but if that's what it costs.
Sorry, I didn't hear anything.
Say hall gardening.
Oh, yes, it was a bit more than, it was literally clearing it when it was overgrown for quite a number of months, and it was preparing it for the viewings.
Which were successful.
Yes.
Okay, anything else?
I suppose a sort of broad question around, obviously we're now filling in with temporary staff, aren't we, for caretaking. How does that compare with what we were paying for an employee in terms of the increase? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's less. I doubt it.
Well, it's going to be more per hour.
Yeah.
But the on costs that the employees are paid are not there. So it will even out to a certain extent.
It will
I
be
haven't
close.
done a full
That's good to know.
exercise.
It's good to know that we've done
It's about the same.
It's likely to be obviously maybe 5 or 10% more, but not much more than that usually. But as you said, the on costs are covered by them.
And also with these agency staff, we don't have to employ them for the whole.
Yeah.
No, of
week.
course not.
You
Yeah.
know, we can choose our
Very specific.
few hours,
No.
yeah.
And just to, sorry, Chair, just to explain, the town clerk, myself and the property manager are reviewing the whole situations. We're not running straight into like a recruitment programme.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. That's what we've done before. It's failed several times. So we now need to have a strategy going forward of what we're going to do with the caretaking staff. So, so the as soon as the property manager, probably early in the new year, comes back, the town clerk and I will review that and then bring that to committee so that you know what's happening. That's okay.
Excellent.
Can I just ask, this is the caretaker. We also now have a member of staff who's on long-term sick. Is this likely to be a situation that we're going to be employing agency staff for as well? I'm assuming we'll have to.
That agency staff member is covering that member of staff.
Oh, right, so we're not having to pay twice.
No.
No, that's helpful to know.
Well, it is a double payment where we're paying sick pay.
Yeah,
It will be a
of
double.
course, yes, but I mean, that you're stuck, that's the contractual situation anyway. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can we move on to attachment 2B?
Are you going to take a vote on these at the end of the first set
Or individually? Do we need to vote on each of them?
we will
Just
do?
to approve them? Okay, should we just vote on attachment 2A to begin with?
Correct.
Second, all those in favour? Thank you. Now we'll move on to 2B, or not 2B.
No.
Approval list, expenditure transactions, anything on this schedule?
I noticed that Councillor C. Wiles got some money from the council. How did that get?
Well, I noticed that. I did notice that, yes.
But I have laid out probably 50 or 100 of my own money as well. So it's not over generous.
Looking at the wrong thing, I can't see what you're talking.
Two
telephone.
That was
B,
previously
It's
approved.
1409.
Don't worry,
two B
Colin.
further down, second page, I think.
Well, this
Yes.
is the second page.
I propose we accept.
Okay, all those in, I propose we accept 2B.
Yeah.
All those in
Yes,
favour?
because that's 2C.
Now we
I
move
think
on
I'm looking at
to
the wrong thing.
2C, which
This is
is
the
bank
reconciliation.
account reconciled statement
Yeah, I'm looking at the
for
wrong thing.
November.
It's only a reconciled account, so I'm
Yeah.
very happy to propose that. There shouldn't be
Propose.
any, there shouldn't be any issues with
All those
that.
in
That's
favour
the
of it?
checks being made.
Yeah, okay. That's agreed. Next one is 2D, which is the cash book financial statement. Any comments on this?
Excuse me, what was the item on the drill hall?
Oh, yeah.
155, drill hall, 12,775.
Oh, that's the,
Rent, isn't it?
that's,
Where we are.
Much too big, keep going
No.
down.
Yeah,
that's the
Two
total rent
Keep going.
received to date.
that's 2C.
Okay.
No, let's start at 2C, but it's got like 4 pages.
Okay, anything else on?
It's very confusing.
And that's 2D.
Then you've got some pages missing somewhere.
This is 2D.
I don't seem to have the full agenda. I don't know.
You found it?
No,
There we go.
Anything else on 2D?
No.
No, so I'll propose we accept that.
Second that.
All those in favour? And finally, 2B, which is the budget variance report for the end of November.
It's 2E. You got it.
Any comments on this one?
no. I don't seem to have.
I suppose, are there any points that you need to raise on this, Karen? Is there anything that we need to be alerted to? We'll look through it and.
No, I think what I've done is raise those in other reports, so, like
Okay.
forecasting
What I don't
reports.
understand is that
Things have
this,
been raised in those
this
reports.
agenda is chaired by Councillor Shuker.
Could I just ask a question
Yeah.
on the P22 electricity charge? That's the final payment, is it now?
Yes, the vote moved out
Okay.
in
It's gone for
October, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I forgot to ask you that yesterday.
Up for sale if you want to buy it.
My garden pond isn't big enough.
Oh, shame.
Maybe the Navy will buy it.
Yeah, US maybe.
Okay, so
Anyway,
happy with
well,
2E?
Yep.
I'm happy to propose that.
I'll second that.
Second that, all those in favour?
Yep.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 6, which is the draft budget for 25-26. We looked at this at the last meeting, and this is the second iteration, if you like. So Karen has gone away and looked at trying to achieve a target of 5% for the precept uplift. Karen, do you want to talk through this? Your report's fairly clear, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've listed the changes
Yeah.
made, so they're all involved with a bit of explanation underneath. Some things have gone down, some things have gone up, but on top of that report, we received from Dover District Council yesterday the proposed tax base for 25-26, which is 2204.94, which is an uplift on this year's tax base.
Yeah.
And I've done a calculation. The preset figure in the budget proposed in front of you is 316,957.82. If we use the new tax base, we get an extra 13,500.
Excellent.
So that is good news.
That's very good
And it
news.
might change,
Yes.
the discussion.
So the preset goes up to 330,
330 is
Yeah,
done.
330,520.
and that's, the increase for a Band D household is the
Yes,
same.
the increase would be 5%,
15.
as illustrated, yeah.
Oh, that's good. So the tax base has gone up because of new properties.
Yeah, obviously it's only a suggested tax base and it won't be confirmed until the end of March. But it hardly ever changes, so.
Okay. So I went through this budget. It's pleasing that some of the headings are have gone down from previous years, so it shows that we're looking prudently at our finances. And the fact that this is a 5% increase or £15 per average household, I don't think that's an unreasonable increase to levy on people. So any comments on this draft budget, Councillor Jones?
Oh, thank you. No, I just want to say I'm grateful for the work that's been done.
Yeah.
I feel fairly comfortable. I mean, I would always like not to have to increase it at all, but I feel fairly comfortable that with the 5% preset that we can continue to work within tight guidelines, but to do our job and that we're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
So
Councillor Silver, then Councillor Black.
just more a practical reflection on the opportunity that's just been put in front of us of potentially another 13,000 or thereabouts. The question is, because we should be going to full STC with a view, it would be good to sort of think about how we might want to play that, and maybe stuff might sort of come out of the woodwork between now and then in any case. But the options is that, you know, our preset could be reduced slightly. We could reduce the STBF demand slightly. So there are things we have a variance around in terms of what we can do.
Councillor Black, can you give us
Yeah,
an overview?
it was just, thank you, Karen, for giving me, but I couldn't find where the HIPS reserve was. Is this in these papers? Because I couldn't see it, then that may be me being a bit thick. But thank you for the data.
The addition to the HIPS reserve is definitely
Yes, I saw that.
here.
Because I asked you about that, yes.
Yeah, the existing reserve is set up within the general fund.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, the bank balance is made up of the
Right,
reserves
that's why I didn't spot
and
it.
the current budget.
Okay,
So-
I'll know where to look next time then, thank you.
Yeah, they're in the edge system, it lists them out at the end of the cash book, I believe, so.
Okay,
The total reserve will be listed out separately for each
thank
one.
you, that's helpful, thank you. But you did actually write to me and tell me what the sums were, which was very helpful.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think a lot of these, two things. One thing, to follow up on what Councillor Duke has said, that's a very good observation, and thank you for bringing that forward. But I think we should see this changing the precept as perhaps a contingency that we will have there, and to say that 13,000, or we could slightly reduce the precept to take into account that 13,000. The two factors on that is, one factor, it's not going to be agreed or approved until March. And the second one is, if we did that, we would be even tighter than we already are. So we know the situation we were in previously, the precept that the RFO had previously suggested we should be, charging, and we've gone for this magic 5%, which quite luckily the RFO has been able to cut off corners here and add corners there. And I would just like to say a big thank you to both to her and the town clerk, because they're trying to run something that is each year consuming more and more costs that are going up dramatically, and some of these contractor costs are unbelievable. But despite that, I mean, there's not much we can do in this world. But the second thing is that I think we should have that contingency. So we've got that as an inbuilt contingency, and let's keep that there as a buffer.
And that was my point about just having a conversation at least, rather than just
Exactly.
tumbleweed moments of
that's
in the background.
Oh,
Because I'm comfortable with 5%, and that was a figure that I was very strongly in favour of when we first discussed it. And I'm really glad that Trans been able to produce a budget that mirrors that sort of intention. So that's brilliant. And notwithstanding the fact that we don't really have a contingency for things going wrong for this council, it's a contingency amount.
It's just a bit of support, isn't it, really?
I mean, we do have the operating reserve,
We do.
which is going to be 60,000.
Yes.
But the budget also relies on the balance brought forward, which I put in as 35,000. If that for any reason is lower,
Yes.
Exactly.
then we would need that 30,000.
And if you looked at the overheads on the operating costs on a monthly basis, the operational contingency we've got wouldn't last us very long in a true emergency. So we've all got to bear that in mind, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with 5% and it gives us a bit of leeway in case of unexpected items coming up. So is that the general view of the committee as well?
That's,
Yes, mine.
that's it.
Okay.
Position.
Okay, Councillor Pennington. You had something?
Oh, sorry, I thought,
No,
I was ready to vote. I assumed that,
You're ahead of yourself. I had a few sort of minor queries, if that's possible, just to talk through. So, Black Lane allotments are showing as zero, both for income and expenditure. Is that because they're now going to be ring fenced?
Yes, yeah, so
Yeah.
any balance we have at the end of the year won't go back into that pot, it will go into reserve.
Okay, that's fine. I just noted Guildhall Square income has almost doubled next year over this year, which is a good progress. I wondered, Karen, if you could, on the income budget, 450 to 452, reimbursement by STBF, Museum, Guildhall, etc. Would you be able to just run through what those columns mean?
That is where Sandwich Town Council pays the salaries for all the staff in the first instance, and then an apportionment is calculated, and then the reimbursement is made by the Tollbridge Fund. So the Guildhall account, the Tollbridge Fund account, and the museum account all pay something back, but the museum account only pays back ad hoc items, not salary items. I just add. So the salary is coming back from the Guildhall and the Tollbridge Fund accounts. The Town Council and the Tollbridge Fund do share a lot of costs that are also recalculated at the end of the year. So there might be other items in those lines as well, other than salaries.
Are there any other queries on specific lines or columns? So if that's the case, can I say thanks to Jill and to Karen for all the hard work on this, and it's I'm very comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to propose that we accept this budget for 25/6.
There's two recommendations there, Mr. Chairman, so I just wanted to say, should we be adopting the
Hold on, let me just
first two recommendations?
So the first recommendations, there are no changes being proposed. I take it, so are we happy to approve this draft budget to go to council next week? I propose.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favour? Councillor Black's abstaining. Is there a?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be December, but we missed the December
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, this will be an extraordinary meeting in early January, or mid-January. Okay. So the second item is, well, are we happy to agree that we have to
Yeah, I think those items, no changes, the second one was to approve it.
Okay, so we agree we should have an extraordinary meeting in January, early to mid-January.
I'll agree to that.
You agree to that?
Extraordinary meeting.
Okay. Thank you again for that. So then we move on to item 7, which is the priorities and action log for this committee. This is attachment 5. Are there any comments on this? If you recall, this was simplified following the meeting I had with the town clerk. So hopefully it's a much clearer exposition of where we are and where we hope to go. Any comments on this?
I thought it's much better. It's a great improvement. I'm glad it's been undertaken. So
Okay,
I'd like to propose acceptance of it in its current state.
I'll second that. All those in favour? Okay, so that's agreed, thank you. So the next item is item 8. Budgets 24/5, allocation of council staff to budgets. This is a report put forward by Councillor Breen. He wanted to table this at the previous meeting, but it's coming to this meeting for a more in-depth discussion. So this just sets out how individual council staff are allocated between the 3 headings of STBF, Guildhall, STBF and STC. And I think Councillor Breen wants us really to discuss whether these allocations are reasonable, accurate, and if not, how they should be perhaps redesigned. So are there any comments on this?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, as I said previously on this, I mean, this is something that we wouldn't have individual knowledge of really. I'm not quite sure how Councillor Breen's come to these exact figures and calculations, so, but I would have to be led by the town clerk or possibly the RFO as to whether or not these figures are correct, based on the split of the work from these members of staff. So,
Is these figures you provided?
Well, no, they're figures that we use, because basically you cannot, in the scheme of day-to-day operations, we can't all spend time stopping and thinking, are we doing work for the Guildhall, Tonbridge Fund or STC? So these are broadly what we see as proportion of time that we're spending. You know, we can't say that they're accurate to, you know, the hour or anything, but in our experience, this is a true representation of the proportion of time that we're spending.
I suppose the question is, where do we want to go with this report? And in the absence of council agreement, it's difficult to determine. I think that the principle that's been applied by Council Green is a valid one, because obviously we are paying for staff out of different budgets, and we should be apportioning it correctly. But in my view, I wouldn't have a view what each member of staff was doing. And the only way that you could do that is, there are 2 ways you could do it. You can get in an external resource to monitor, do time and motion, or alternatively you'd get logbooks done by all the staff as they do the work. I'm not championing either of those 2 options, because the work's got to be done.
Yeah.
And I just one specific point about is the list complete in terms of marketing assistant, social media officer, museum assistant. But all of those are maybe good things to discuss. But the place of that probably should be done is in the HR committee, with a view on the budget available to resource something. I don't think it's a finance and general purposes place to debate staffing of the council staff.
Yeah, I'm slightly confused here. Were you able to discuss this with Councillor Green? Because you've said, I think a few minutes ago, that in your view, these percentages are a pretty good indicator.
Yeah.
And were you able to speak to Councillor Green about that? Because he's saying down here, our proposed hours correct. If you're not fond of all that information, I really don't know who else would be.
Yeah, so basically, I'm full-time, the RFO's full-time. All these hours are true reflection. The assistant clerk 30 hours, museum coordinator full-time, reception administration 25, property manager full-time. We don't currently have a full-time caretaker.
No.
Part-time caretaker 30 hours, cleaner 15 hours, and the Guildhall assistant full-time. So those are, yes, correct.
So you're brought, so it's not it's a case of then point B, 2B is correct.
Yes.
And 2C is also correct. Yeah?
Yeah, that's how we've, in the main, and obviously what you need to factor in as well is there are peaks and troughs during the year.
Of course.
We'll be doing more STC than Tonbridge Fund and vice versa. So I think it's not an exact science, it can't be, unless we spend part of our working week keeping records, which I'm not an advocate of, and I don't think it's going to help anybody.
I'd be surprised if Council Green was.
Okay.
But that's, so if he's really saying that, do we agree these are right? By the sound of it, our two officers are saying they are right, so why don't we just accept it? Why are we taking this to anybody else?
Councillor.
Well, yes, I mean, very briefly, it seems to me that if the staff are comfortable with this percentage reflection of the broad balance of their work through a fairly typical year, then we stick with it. I don't think anything much would be gained by asking for a huge and detailed exercise to log this day by day. If staff feel comfortable with this assessment of how they're doing things, then I think we can feel we can proceed on this basis.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at this list and to me it seemed about right. My only thought was maybe the property manager could be spending more on STBF assets, etc. But it swings and roundabouts, because if the preset doesn't pay for this, then the toll bridge fund has to pay. So either way, it's like pushing a sponge, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I propose that we accept the current percentages allocated under each heading and move on.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll second that.
That's my proposal.
I'll second that.
I'd like to abstain from this one. Just because I think it isn't an exact science, and I think if you want to accept this as a comfort blanket that can go ahead, then that's okay.
Okay, so is all in favour of that? I mean, I think it's something we can come back to. Sorry, all in favour?
It's the best estimate at the time.
One abstention. Yeah. It's something we can come back to in future.
Chair, could I ask in relation to item 9, are we going to actually discuss the points arising in relation to what we were asked for in terms of non-monetary contributions?
I'll come on to that
You will.
next, if that's okay. So yeah, now item 9, we've had Abby come earlier to talk to us. So the proposal I made when she was here was that she should write to the town clerk with a specific list of desires, if you like, and that there should then be a meeting with the property manager between the F&GP and the council to talk about their requirements. So I'm prepared to propose that.
Well, I do have one concern about possible damage to council property. Both to, I mean, if we offer the use of tables, for example, and gazebos, I mean, the Folk and Ale is a very popular festival, and things can be banged into and dropped and all the rest. So I'm just wondering how we would cover that.
Well, I think that's something for the property manager to discuss with them at the time, whether it requires a deposit or
Yes.
some kind of insurance or guarantee.
Well, we have signed off guidance that includes the payment of the deposit by all
for the full
hirers,
But they're not actually hiring those items,
No,
are
no.
they?
The community organisations have to pay a deposit for the use of the forecourt, so there will be a
But
retained
that doesn't
amount.
include the tables and
No.
gazebos.
Well, I mean, it could just be extended to include any items provided by
Yeah.
Yes.
the town council.
Well, I think
But it's a
that
good
has to
point.
be-
I think that's a good point. That should be
Yeah.
stated in the
Yes.
agreement.
Yes.
That's what I was saying. I think Councillor Anderson's got a very good point here.
Yeah.
And I think this is the place to discuss it. We can hand it on to the property manager,
Yeah.
but the property manager joined us in August. So he's not even been here for a year. He doesn't even know the events,
No.
doesn't know what's happening. All of the people in this room do.
Mhm.
Councillor Anderson's got a very good point. I'm not being anti-events, but the problem is up until now, events organisers have come to us and we've said, yeah, that's okay, have the electricity, yeah, how many tables and chairs do you want, you can have those, we'll give you a caretaker to set it all up. And our gazebos, I'm very proud of our gazebos, and I think our gazebos are even better than Deal's gazebos. I think they're really top market gazebos. I'm really proud of our market, and I think it's fantastic. And as Councillor Huntington's pointed out, is, you know, we're going to lend this equipment to them. There isn't any provision, you know, there's a deposit for the use of the forecourt, but there's not for the equipment. And I think this is a very valid point, and we need to cover it, because even for the forecourt, in the 1940s event that we had earlier this year, there was a list, you know, of massive issues. They've never been cleared up, and you know, I'm not saying it would happen in the Focanel event, but in the 1940s event, it was
The 50s event.
50s, was it? Sorry, 50s, yeah, I beg your pardon.
59,
You're correct, Councillor Anderson. Yeah, the 1950s event. And those items have never been cleared up now. And there was a large number of staff hours put in to rectify things. And some of the staff came in the following day and had to clear up defecation and urine and all sorts of things. And it's never been mentioned. And our staff come in after an event and they get on with things because that's what they do. And we need to recognise that these events need to pull their own weight. And with all due respect, if they lose funding from another area, they have to look for it in some other area. So, you know, but it's not for the town council or the Tollbridge Fund to make up for losses by other councils. And I just want us to discuss this and get this right.
Councillor Blair.
This isn't a simple solution, is to give the property manager a full checklist of all of the items we've discussed yet and any others, particularly someone like yourself, Councillor Wells, who's been involved in festivals and just literally have a full briefing session with him. If that means that we need to think again about the size of the deposit, well, that's something coming down the track later. But just a full briefing session, here's the checklist, what are we going to do, what are we going to do about it? She was extremely good at trying to nail our colours to the mast, and you know, all good luck to her, but we didn't accept any of it.
So there are certain things that we've already agreed as a council that are chargeable for events, regardless of whether they're community events or not. So electricity is one thing. So I think, and that if we were to give access to free electricity, that actually then is a cost. So it's not a non-financial element. But there are certain things within the list that are non-financial, save the fact that damage would have a cost. So there could be, if we move forward on those particular aspects, build in some contingency to protect the council. And that's how I prefer it. I think we should strip out those things that actually do have a cost. It was flagged up about the staffing. We may have a cost attached to that.
Yeah.
So we should work through that. And I don't think the property manager is the person to go off and do the investigation, but we still, as a group of people on this committee, still have responsibility for guiding and deciding.
I agree totally.
Yeah.
Councillor
Yes, thank you.
Eddington and Cost.
Yes, thank you. I'm a bit shocked to hear what happened after the 50s festival. I take on board the point made earlier by Councillor Carter that this is setting a precedent. It's not simply a deal to be negotiated with the Focanel. It's going to have much wider implications, and I think we should take our responsibilities really and try and sort something out that will be fair to everyone. I do think we don't want to deter these events, and I hope that by talking it through with them, we can reach an agreement on what we can do for them and what we can't do for them. But I agree that there are risks here for the council, and I don't think we should go into it lightly. As with everything, we can review it for next year, but I wouldn't like things to go set off on the wrong path this year and us have to clear up the mess in a year's time.
Can I, in terms of the 50s, if there were those problems, and I've heard those reports,
No.
I don't know if they've made a booking or replied to book for next year, but surely we should be saying to them,
They have, yeah.
hold on a minute, either we don't want you back, or if you come back,
Yeah.
This is what you got
this
to do.
is your final last chance saloon. If it happens again, you won't be back again. In terms of equipment, from memory, the deposit's £250 for the forecourt.
Yeah.
Surely we can say, we can agree to tweak that. If equipment is provided on top of that, we make the deposit £500 or £1,000.
Yes.
That wouldn't cover one gazebo, would it? £250 for,
What, do you want them to give 10,000 as a deposit?
wow.
You know, where's it stop?
This or somewhere else.
I think we're trying to find solutions too
Yes.
quickly. We're doing it in a measured, stepped way. For example, they will have insurance themselves, so we need to have a conversation about what that covers. So there's a number of aspects to this that we should just move forward on. I think the principle should be that we're here to support the events that we see that really make this town tick in a best way possible, but whilst we still protect the assets, which all of this falls within, of the council.
Exactly. We're here to work in partnership with them where we can.
Exactly.
And it's absurd to say they have to bring in their own
Oh,
tables
yeah,
and chairs
yeah,
if we've got them in the building.
Of course. But Councillor Pennington actually raised a very valid point, is all of these items that we would be lending to them, what is the cover on those items? So, for instance, if a gazebo collapses because there's a fault with that gazebo, who's at fault if somebody has an accident? Likewise with a table, if one of the tables has got some of the legs that are loose, that table collapses and a child is underneath the table, who is liable for that? We've lent it in good faith, but who's covering for those accidents that could possibly go wrong? And I'm not being alarmist here, I'm just making sure that at the end of the day, when somebody, this forecourt out here, it's amazing. Do you know, I think we had 2 people fall over, trip or have falls on the forecourt, and then this forecourt was completely repaved, costing £1.3 million, and as a lot of people said, that was 1.3 million you shouldn't have spent. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying about is the equipment, is Councillor Pennington hit on that. If this equipment is put forward, who is liable for that equipment as well?
Well, I'm assuming it will come under their public liability insurance. Just as if a stall
That's what we need to check, because we do need,
catches fire.
I suppose we need to be careful in the sense that we already are on a very regular basis doing things with people, lending stuff, etc. So if we're not doing it right, we need to not do it. We need to do it right in all
across
aspects.
the board,
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah, so let's-
Those risks.
Hold on, can we, I think Councillor Carter.
Nothing, don't worry now. I think you can cover, yeah.
The risks, I'm sorry.
The only parallel is to do, when you're already talking about the risks, that's what I was asking.
Well, the risks must surely apply to the markets
Yes.
now, every day. So if we haven't got an answer to that, then we should have. It comes back to my point. We need to give the property manager a thorough briefing on the concerns we've got. But it is, I suggest, his responsibility to come back with a plan and say, my advice to you is do X, Y, and Z, but not A, B, and C. And then as a council, we can then decide, do we include A, B, and C or not?
Yeah.
And I think he's the professional. Give him that. Some of the risks that have been raised are risks we have every single day. And as I say, every time you put a market stall up, those risks exist. So nothing is different, I suggest. No,
There's a danger of going down the
exactly.
trade show route where you don't do anything because you
Exactly.
think.
And there are one or two things we should we should be able in this group to say actually that shouldn't be pursued by the property manager. So for example, free electricity, well actually we've signed off guidance that it is clear that, you know, we shouldn't be overturning that guidance because that applies to anybody who makes a booking.
So
So that's my personal view. And there is an on-cost to the council if we give it free. So it's not a non-financial cost to us.
So I would like to just differ, sorry, with Councillor Black because it is different. It is different. So I've attended both, and when you go to a market, you've got gazebos up, and you've got people just milling around the gazebos, and you've got people setting up on the tables they're putting their goods on the table, and that's it. It's a counter. But in an event where there's any alcohol, it completely changes everything. And I've been to some events, the Broadstairs Folk and Ale one, where I've seen people dancing on top of the tables and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that would happen here, but if it does and it collapses and 2 people get broken ankles, that's all I'm saying. It is different in the factor that you don't have perhaps 150, 200 people under the influence of alcohol wandering around the market buying bread and cotton and
Sure.
You're never sure about that.
But that's why these events have stewards and
Yeah.
security guards.
And they have a specific license, and they don't pay the license. They ain't going to get it if you can.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I would also like, I mean, I'm in favour of these events, but I'm a half-empty person, and I'm thinking about the use of the loos downstairs because, you know, I mean, I can see why they want to use them, and it does seem, you know, that they should be available for the public, but at the Folk and Ale, I'm just rather concerned about damage, mess, all the rest.
Sorry, but nothing will ever happen if we keep going down this road.
No, I know.
We have to
But
support
I
these
think we do,
events.
yes, we have to, but they are asking for us to open the loos downstairs.
They're signing an agreement, aren't they? with
Yeah.
us
And
about-
sorry, on the toilets, don't forget that we have a responsibility for the toilets that would be used if we didn't open up the guild door, and they're not accessible. They're not.
No.
So actually, if there's damage, it could just as easily happen there
Hmm.
as well, Claire. So
But on the other hand, they hire portaloos, so it's their
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yes, but
They will
that's
hire portaloo during the day anyway.
Yeah.
yes,
So-
but what this person said, and I can't remember her name, I'm sorry, was that one of the costs they could cut is the hire of portaloos,
But that's
if
how
we
people-
made our loos available.
Exactly, yeah, if you organize an event, you put all that into consideration. You're planning, so you need everywhere you have portaloos, health and safety, you have the first aid on site, all these events go. I mean, Paul and I have run the Christmas light for
Well,
15 years.
Well, no, more recent than that, just to give you a bit of an example of background to this. Danielle and I, we are part organisers of the classic car event at the school. And the school said on no account could the classic car event use any of the facilities of the school or any of the property of the school. When we hire that for £2,500, that field, all we get is the field. We're not allowed to use the school's toilets. We're not allowed to use any of their furniture. We're not allowed to use their electricity. So as event organisers for the major classic car event for Sandwich, we get in generators, we get in portaloos, we get in stewards, we get everything like that. And it's a part of our overheads for the classic car event. And we wouldn't expect the school to leave the doors open and let people wander in and out.
But we are a town council with a responsibility to community events. The school doesn't have that.
May I suggest that she did, I did say she nailed her colours to the mast. It's an opening negotiating point.
Yeah.
We should not be doing this negotiation, which is now what we're getting into. Surely we should leave it to our professional property manager, fully briefed with our concerns, such as, when we said no to electricity, and for him to come back to us with a full list and to say, we decided, do we have A, B, and C, or do we just go for X, Y, and Z? And that's using the professional skills he's got, not us trying to do it for him.
So I would come back to my first proposal,
Yeah.
which is that Abby Taylor has gone away and she's been asked to write to the town clerk
Yeah.
with her specific requirements.
Yeah.
We get that letter. She has a meeting with the property manager, who's fully briefed by the town clerk on our concerns, which have been raised tonight. And Julian comes back to the town clerk or to us as required to talk about additional requirements, increased deposits, signing in blood, etc., as the case may be. So that's my proposal.
Second.
So
Yes.
be happy to agree then.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Abstention, yeah.
One abstention. So is that okay?
Yes.
And can I just say, I think Councillor Anderson is very, very fortuitous in what she's saying, because the items that she flagged up, we've had from the 1950s event, and there's been no recompense. There's been no recompense.
But those problems have not come back here that I'm aware of.
No, unfortunately,
So
they
it's all
weren't.
been
They were not
discussed
flagged up
internally.
here, but it's almost as if Councillor Anderson has got,
Ooh, yes.
psychic powers. You're highlighting the things that the town clerk raised with me after the 1950s event, and I was absolutely shocked.
But perhaps in future, Jill, what we need is a kind of wrap-up meeting, a wrap-up item at the end of the year's events to say,
This one.
you know, what went well, what didn't go well,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, there are things that do go well on every single event.
Yeah.
I could sit here and.
That's never come here, has it? We haven't discussed it.
No.
It's all
Because-
coming out now. It's all coming out now. You're hearing what's actually truthfully occurring
But if-
and what the staff are having to work
But
with.
if we had that, we could say, okay, you know, last written warning to this event, or as the case may
That would
be.
be all of them.
Or-
That would be all of
Yeah.
them. There's been different, I could give you different
Sorry?
examples with every single one of them, where there has been something that's not very, not very nice to deal with, or, people being sick to the extent where, somebody's wading through that to actually clean a public toilet. That's what happened with the event that you hear about tonight.
So are you saying we should have no events whatsoever on the?
No, I'm not saying that. That's why I haven't been negative and coming to you with the negatives. We're just getting on with it as the message. That's what.
Can I just raise a matter?
Expressions we shouldn't start any nonsense.
Can I just raise a matter here? Sorry, which has been totally forgotten and missed out of. I'd like to ask the town clerk about the Feastable company and what she thinks about them in comparison to the other event organisers, because I've noticed myself, and I do this surveillance when I come down to see these events, and I noticed that the Feastable seem to get all these factors right. I'm not saying they get all of them right, but they get a large majority of them right. And the Feastable events are exceptionally well managed and well organised, and they cover things, and that's because they've been doing them for years and they know what they're doing. And they're able to cover their outgoings by charging the people that are making the money, which is the stallholders. That's what you should consider. Ask the town clerk now, any one of you, in comparison. The Feastable.
Only that they are a very good organisation. They're very easy to deal with. They take the responsibility on. I don't know whether that, because obviously there's a challenge when you are organising community events and you're using volunteers, you're not paying people, that is a difference.
Exactly.
And I think that's reflected at times
100%.
because there is not that responsibility there.
Spot on.
And I think, because I've organised events myself, it is a huge challenge. And if you don't have the right setup of personnel on the day, it can quickly unravel.
Yeah.
And, that's part and parcel of
The problem with that is that Zoom events would not be able to put on an event like the Folk and Ale Festival. Why?
They do
Would they?
a similar festival in London, because I've seen it on their advertising. But just rather than completely glossing the Zoom events as to be admired and promoted above the others, when we started on this conversation, if we roll back about 4 months or so, it was about the Guildhall forecourt and the damage to it. The Zoom events, only on their first festival did they not leave any damage in terms of staining, etc. The subsequent events did do that. So they also have contributed to the issue we've had with the state of the forecourt. But that's different from relationships that we, how they present themselves, how they engage with. That's a very different matter.
And they are paying £300 a day.
Yes, and helping through the day.
Exactly. So that's point.
Two comments on that. One is that Zoom is not popular in all quarters of the
Yes.
town, as we well know.
Why is that? Sorry, I'm not aware of why.
Well, the outcry from a whole number of traders when it was
Some
first
traders are very
proposed,
unhappy.
there was a tremendous hoo-ha.
And within the council.
I didn't have anything.
Well, there was.
I'll talk to you. And the second point is that SCA now has a new leadership, new committee. So hopefully we can develop a more professional working
Seems like it,
relationship with them.
Yeah.
And going forward, perhaps we need a kind of roundtable meeting where some of these past issues can be aired and the town clerk can make it clear that they need to buck up their ideas. Anyway, we've agreed
So we're
the way
done.
forward on this, so I propose we move on to the next item.
Yeah.
Thank you for that robust discussion. Item 10 is business plan 25-27. Councillor Wiles to provide a verbal update on the development of the business plan for the council. So the council did have a business plan, I recall, 3 or 4 years ago, but that's fallen into has lapsed rather. For the last 2 years of this current administration, we haven't really had a business plan. And I think that has caused certain problems in terms of not having a clear focus on what our priorities are. It's had caused problems for the town clerk and the staff because they get multiple requests from all kinds of people, councillors and others, saying this is a priority. And it's hard for staff to respond to that when the council itself doesn't have a clear list of priorities. So the proposal I've looked at with Councillor Shuker is really to develop a business plan, a fairly brief business plan, not too long, but with maybe 10 clear priorities for the last 2 years of this administration, so that we can start from May onwards. And that would help us as a council. It would also help the town clerk to be able to say, sorry, this is not a current priority. You'll need to talk to to my line manager if you have a problem with that. So it helps the staff to defend their work as well if we have clear priorities. So I'm proposing that we bring something to probably March or April committees next year that can, well, really it would need to commence from April onwards for 25-6 and 26-7. And I'll send round an email to all councillors. I'll ask for thoughts and comments and ideas, but I'm happy to write this myself with the town clerk and the Councillor Shuker and to put something together. As I say, it won't be a really, really long document. It will be fairly brief, but it will help to hopefully crystallise our thoughts and ideas about where we're going. So that's my proposal.
Yeah.
Councillor
Yes,
Dennington first.
Sorry.
No,
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I fully support the concept. I think it's an important sort of framework for us to do our work in. So I look forward to that. I would hope we can discuss it in March to give sufficient time for full discussion in the council and to have it up and running from May.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think actually it almost writes itself already in terms of things that we know that we are responsible for. Some of those things are already in train and we just need to be signed up to as a council. We're going to deliver them. So I did a jot down last night when I was just sitting down and I came up with 6 items. We've talked about an asset strategy. We've talked about a HIP getting that baselined and in place for the council. We've still got an outstanding requirement to respond to the climate emergency. So we should take time next year to think about how we're going to do that. How do we move towards zero energy costs in terms of how we operate as a council? There's a lot of information already out there that we can dip into and use. Reviewing the efficiency of the STBF investments and assets. Whilst that's not council specific, it still is something that we need to do in parallel. We've got to launch the Maddox Fund. We have to get that up and running this year, in next year. So that it almost writes itself, Colin, I think, in terms of what I'm trying to say is what we shouldn't do is end up with 12 new things just because people might think they're more exciting. Unfortunately, we've already got a certain amount of things in the bag that we're carrying around with us.
The danger with this is you have 10 priorities, and within each priority you then have 10 sub-priorities.
It can be
They have to
one
be,
liner.
they can't be too vague, they have to be fairly, smart measurable. So it's going to be a challenge to put that into words. But we should have a go.
I just want to say I'm fully behind this. I think it's a good idea. Any organisation or business should have a business plan because that steers you as to where you're going and what you're actually undertaking. So I think that's really important. I would like to see full consultation with the full council so that everybody's on board and everybody gets the opportunity to have an input into this. I think the town clerk is key to it because the town clerk is the key holder to the resources and the means in which to make the business plan actually be achieved, for that matter. And then that just brings me on to, there probably is quite a large list of items that all of us in this room would like to see on the business plan. I think what we need to do is we need to do two things. One, I've noticed Councillor Wiles has said this is a 2-year business plan, so that gives us those 2 years. I mean, quite a lot of organisations have 5-year business plans. This is a 2-year one, so that's I think that's quite good. That's quite commendable that we're not pushing ourselves too far because things are so changeable now. But the other factor is that I think we need to be aware of perhaps other events that happen. So as we've had up to now, we've had things like COVID and we've had the cost of living crisis and things like that. So we need to be aware of outside external forces as to the delivery of those items as well. So.
I mean, we could make it a 5-year plan, but that would be contingent upon the
It's
following.
actually 2 years.
I wasn't suggesting that at all because in 2 years' time, as Councillor Black said, the council could change, and it could not. You never know.
You're psychic, right? You're going to tell us.
Well, I was just thinking of a song I used to
Yes.
sing as a child.
No, that's fine. I thought it was engagement.
From the list of 5-year plan, for the years it took.
Okay, so if you're happy I'll propose that we start work on this. I'll consult with the councillors and say all those in favour, I'll second that. And we'll bring something hopefully to the March draft. Thank you. Thank you very much. The last item is date and time of next meeting, 22nd of January. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
First one.
Now we have the two.
Now we have the Tollbridge Fund.
Some reason now. It was when I came home singing those kinds of songs at my parents. Maybe not that.
Okay.
It's got to
Anything else sorted for
This is what Jill was telling me about. She said, oh, thank you.
Apologies, I just want to the line. That'll be helpful. Okay, moving on to the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund Finance Committee. First of all, Town Clerk, are there any apologies for absences received?
Yes, so Councillor Breen has a travel commitment and Councillor Torrance an illness.
Okay. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Does any member have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect to the agenda for this meeting? Okay. Item 3, minutes of the Finance Committee meeting that was held on the 20th of November. And that's attachment 1 in the pack. Are there any comments from anybody in terms of these? No. Would you like to propose that we accept the minutes? Anybody like seconds?
I'll second it.
And the vote? Thank you very much. Item 4, public participation. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak this evening?
No question.
Thank you very much. We have, in terms of the minutes that we've just approved, there is an action log which wasn't included, right? So I just wanted to give a very quick run through the actions that were outstanding, and they all actually were raised in the last meeting. So the first was 11.24.5, and that was for the finance officer to arrange for Quilter Cheviot to be advised that future investment should not include investment into their own investment funds. That action was discharged through this Monday's full meeting of the trustees, so that is now closed. The second action was 11.24.8, and that was for the finance officer to look again at the STBF properties and to discuss with the property manager if an additional amount should be built into the 25-26 budget to meet the likely required spend. So I don't know if the town clerk would like to just speak on that one.
Just to say that obviously the property manager is still working his way through looking at the assets and he has been talking with the RFO. So we are aware of the conversation and hopefully we'll have some more information for the next committee meeting. But obviously if there is any things that crop up during a year, the Tollbridge Fund, there might be a need for a report to come through for a drawdown to meet any expenditure.
Yes, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And the final action from the last meeting again was against 11.24.8, and that was the finance officer to discuss with the property manager the opportunity to undertake an energy efficiency review of the Guildhall and to report back with any associated costs to the next meeting of the committee.
Yes, so the property manager is actually working on that at the moment.
Yeah.
And it is envisaged that report should come to the committee next month.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 5, it's the payment schedules and finances. I propose that we separate these out and first take the 3 payment schedules for approval. These are attachments 2A, 2B and 2C in the pack. Can I first of all open up to see if there are any comments at all on any of those 3 items? No?
I'm happy to propose we accept them.
All 3 of them?
All
Yes.
3 of them.
Second from Councillor Pennington. And that. Councillor Carter, have you voted?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So that was A, B and C.
That's A, B and C. Yeah. So the next report we're asked to receive and approve is the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund cash book as of the 30th of November 2024. This is attachment 2D. Any comments from anybody on this? If not, if somebody's happy to propose that.
I'm happy to propose that.
And Councillor Pennington seconding, and the vote. Thank you very much. That's unanimous as well. The next set are the 3 bank reconciliation reports. These are attachments 2E to 2G. Again, can I open up for any comments that anybody might have on these?
Again, they're reconciliations, so unless anybody's spotted any mistakes, it should be quite straightforward.
I have a question to ask actually. Under the cash book where, to do with museum volunteer expense parking permit, 8050/1. I didn't know parking permit is issued to volunteers. Permit, it's a volunteer for museums. I mean, do they normally have experience?
Yes, so these are shared, so it's 2 permits that are shared across all 31
Oh, I see.
volunteers. So what happens is the volunteer will come to the Guildhall,
Yeah.
will sign and take the permit, go and put it on their vehicle, and then when their shift ends, they'll come back to the Guildhall to return it. So it's shared across all the volunteers, and I think that it's a practice that has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, I can confirm, but it has been going on for
For
a
a long
long,
time.
for a long time, but obviously not on Sundays.
Yeah, because I remember at one stage, Councillor Blackwood, you were asking if you have a permit when you come for a meeting to park at the back, didn't you? Like in the car park. That's probably a year ago you had asked for.
That's
I
right.
Yeah, and
asked what the
you said
situation was,
Yeah, so no.
but no, for museum volunteers,
You always
this,
ask, okay,
they've been doing this for a long time, otherwise they'd have a problem with volunteers.
from the parking, fine, that's fine, that's my question. Yeah.
Okay. Can I just check with town clerk, did we vote on those, and that was a comment afterwards, we haven't voted
No,
on
we were
those?
just about to
So
do
does
Just
somebody
about
have to
to, yeah.
propose those?
I proposed it, Martin,
Yep.
Councillor Pennington seconded it, so.
And to the vote?
Oh.
That's unanimous as well. And the final set are the 3 budget variance reports, attachments 2H to 2J. And we're asked to receive and approve these. Are there any comments on these 3 reports? No? No comments, so we have to propose. Councillor Holsby, Councillor Carter, Councillor Pennington, and unanimous. Thank you very much. And the final attachment, 2K, is the Court Achievement Report for November 2024, which we are asked to receive. I'll open up for comments on the report, but first I wanted to point out that the income figure for this month, which others may have noticed, is significantly below the usual performance. So it's £843.53 is the income. Maybe the town clerk or the finance officer could advise on why there is a difference from usual performance.
Yeah, I contacted Court Achievement about this, and they said it was something to do with a timing difference on the dividend payments.
Yeah.
So I queried further, and she said that one of the infrastructure funds, the International Public Partnerships, have changed their payment date from November to December, and this accounts for the differential. She went on to say that there would be further payments at the end of December and January, and all I can imagine is that if it's going to be delayed, that the next payment will rise, and we'll just have to wait and see what they are.
So what I would suggest, so as we don't lose this in the lapse of time, which is very possible, is that we record an action, that we will do a comparison between November's and December's when that comes through, and also against the usual expectation around the income. Yeah.
That's true.
Okay.
I'd agree
any
with that,
comments?
I'd agree that. And obviously, just the caveat I'd like to add is that obviously we've already said previously that there is going to be a review of the Court Achievement, and as was once again foretold by our soothsayer, Councillor Anderson, if I may use that phrase, these results are below par, massively below par. So, Councillor Anderson and I believe Councillor Franklin
And Councillor Breen as well.
and Councillor Breen
Yes.
have all said that the performance is less than lacklustre.
Yeah. So what we agreed at the full meeting of the trustee was that we would bed in the new charity-based scheme, and then within a 6-month period, we would then look again in terms of whether we needed to consider whether it actually is delivering value for money and look elsewhere if that's the option we want to go with.
That's right.
Okay?
I
Any other
think,
comments?
I would say
Yep.
if we are going to look elsewhere, which I think would probably well, I hope we will,
Mhm.
that we should be careful as to who we find to advise us,
Yes.
because, you know, we want somebody who's independent,
We do, good.
and they're quite thin on the ground, I think, these days, totally independent.
Okay.
That's a good point, actually,
Yeah.
because we're with Quilter Chevier because of a previous mayor, I won't mention any names, he recommended them. And then they came to us many years ago, gave a presentation, and as I say, the recommendation was from a previous mayor. And it was only afterwards we found out that he was one of their customers as well.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, my view on this portfolio is the old adage about you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. So I think at the moment, all our eggs are in the medium risk basket. And perhaps we need a more subtle approach, which says, 5% in high risk, 30% or medium risk, whatever.
Yeah,
50%
and that's why we need to investigate the options around independent advice.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to find.
Because if we'd invested, let's say in, Apple or Tesla or any of these shares 10, 20 years ago, £1,000, you probably now have $1 million.
So, yeah, good point. Good point.
But then again, DeLorean might not have delivered that return.
That's the whole point of high risk. You win some, you lose some. If you win big time.
Okay, are we happy to receive the report unless there's any other comments? So we happy to propose receiving it?
Propose
Councillor
that
Carter, Councillor
reluctantly.
Pennington. Okay. Agenda item 6, we have the second draft budgets for the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund and the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund Guildhall accounts for 25-26 to consider. This updated draft budget has been prepared by the Finance Officer following feedback from members at the last meeting. I want to just check, so there was a couple of things that I asked about and I did get answers to these. So there are the increased fees that were agreed at Monday's full meeting of the trustee are now going to be reflected within this budget, aren't they? So that's still to be done. And the indoor market, because we made a decision around not completely
Exclusive.
Option 2.
That's a good word. Yes, so we went for option 2, and that needs to be reflected as well. Is that right?
What I would say is that the fees have not been changed according to the new fee schedule yet. But the indoor market has, I have made a change decrease the 11,000 to 6,000. Although in discussion with the property manager, he has got plans. So it might be that, we do get more than 6,000. May not be for that particular room, but it might be, that we do increase charges. I think that, obviously we need a budget, but it's not absolutely, we don't need to be absolutely tied down to the income budget. If we get more, that's great, and we can work with that at the time.
Because that could, in effect, mean that any potential drawdown that we've identified will be less access needed to it.
Yeah, what I would say is that the version I've created where the 11,000 is now 6, that has had an impact on the contribution from the Tollbridge Fund account, because that's had to rise.
Yes.
And then on the Tollbridge Fund account, that's had an impact on the contribution paid to the Guildhall and the investment drawdown. So there's 4 different
strings
changes. So it's whether we, leave it at 6 or leave it at 11, or in the end, it doesn't really matter as long as we are in the right ballpark.
And I'd just like to say, obviously, it's good that the property manager is progressing things and putting forward new schemes, but let's perhaps work on the data that we do know and the figures that we are pretty sure about instead of speculation, if possible. Sorry to put it that way.
No, that's fine. I know we talked about, sorry, Councillor Anderson.
Yes, well, I was just wondering about £10,000 for STBF property asset management, but are we not doing that in-house? What?
Oh, that's not one fee paid, that is ad hoc asset reviews or, any individual charges for any of our assets that we get throughout the
For
year.
surveys, that kind
Yeah,
of
it's
thing.
not paying outside contractor the whole
Okay.
10,000.
And similarly, the cinema feasibility study, could you explain about that?
That was a request from Councillor Wiles, and that's still in the budget for discussion.
That was, the property manager's commissioned 2 reports on the cinema, a damp report and a property survey.
Right,
So it's really taking forward those 2 items
right,
and looking at possibilities for renovation, refurbishment, etc. So
yes.
we've been employing an architect, presumably, and coming up with some option schemes.
And is the same thing being done for the Fishergate? Because I don't know
That's
what.
The property
Yes.
manager is dealing with that.
Yeah, it's STC specific.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
right, that's not
Yes.
owned by the STBF.
No,
Oh, okay.
So, however, it's a good segue to, we have got another property that, actually, we've also got the toilets at the rear of Guildhall, which are under STBF, but we've definitely got St. Peter's. They will
Yeah.
that is in a similar situation regards investment requirements.
But that's the SD,
That's STBF.
right,
Yes, we have got 2 properties that we know need to have money spent on them in the coming year or years. So I suppose, but talking about the request that Colin put in, I suppose I have some slight concern in the sense that it's almost like we're jumping ahead of, we've got 2 buildings that actually need to have investment in terms of getting them to where they should be, rather than looking at the future for them. But then again, we do need to look at the future for them. So I'm just I've got a conflict of thoughts on this.
and the 2 buildings are the cinema and the gym.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Yeah. Councillor.
Oh yeah, so I was just going to say with that, that it's, I think in a way, I think Councillor Wiles is correct, because the problem is there's been a long period of lack of maintenance, or what have you like that, and as we are the landlords,
Yeah.
so we need to, and at this stage in the game, that both those properties really do need, it doesn't need an unqualified person going around saying, oh, smells a bit damp in here, perhaps we should do something about it. It actually needs now, both these buildings got to a state where both of them got ingress of water, and it could be structural damage for all we know. So I think Councillor Wiles is correct in what he's saying, and relying on his professional property experience and skills,
I think with the cinema, we have a short-term and a long-term issue. So we've had a report which says these damp problems exist, and the cost of remedying them is about 30 to 40,000. So the strategic question for us is whether we do that, or whether we do the whole caboodle. So the idea of getting an architect to come up with options and costs is we can then it can then inform that decision about whether we do.
I'd like to suggest, Councillor Wiles, that because we agreed on Monday that the survey report has already been produced, would go to the next full meeting of the STBF, is could you link up with the property manager, because what you're describing there are 2 sides to the coin. There's a short-term need, which you've already sort of given a trailer in terms of one of the costs associated with it, but there are other costs in terms of what's been highlighted in that report. And we'll all get to see that in the full full meeting, but I think your desire about the future should be integrated in terms of whatever's taken to STBF, so we can look at it in the round.
But the wider issue is the lease and what happens with the lease in the future in both properties.
Yeah.
So you can't look at the property and the lease separately. They're two sides of the same coin.
Any other comments on the budget? Or budgets, sorry. If not, there are two recommendations to consider. So the first is that members consider if there are any changes required to 25-26. Draft budgets on the recommendation says 24-25, so if we can update that to 25-26, I think that's what we're talking about, is that right? Yes. It wasn't just me then. So that's the first one. Is somebody happy to propose that?
I'm happy to propose that we take it, accept it as it is.
And Councillor Arnold seconds and to vote. That's unanimous. Second recommendation is that an extraordinary STBF meeting is held in January to approve the 25-26 budgets. Happy to that. Councillor Back proposing, Councillor Miles is seconding, and it's unanimous. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question about that
Please
before we
do.
finish? You're approving the new version where the indoor market is £6,000?
We haven't seen that, have we?
Not
No,
on this one.
it's not that one on the agenda.
Yes. So
It's been
yeah,
produced
let
since
me.
then.
Yes, let's just backtrack. I'm happy to accept that it is reduced from 11 to 6 because I raised that as a query. If everybody's happy, that's what we acknowledge. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what was agreed.
Okay. Right, item 7, we have a report from the property manager on energy cost savings and efficiency of Guildhall. If the town clerk could highlight the key points and then we can open up for discussion.
Okay, thank you. So this is a brief interim report. There will be a more detailed document that will focus on a number of key measures that collectively will make noteworthy savings over the coming years once the capital expense has been repaid. So talks about the current heating system. Obviously, those of you that have been here a while know that it's fairly new, and it obviously pumps the hot water, feeds the radiators in two distinct areas. Obviously, we know we've got the older part of the building and the newer part, and basically the cost of gas we all know is volatile, and being reliant on just the gas is not a healthy position to be in. We do need also to control it manually within each side of the building with override buttons. And the exposed pipework through the offices in the modern section of the building does make it uncomfortably hot in this time of year. So property manager has been talking to the contractor about this, and hopefully we're going to put in standard operating procedures, SOPs, in place to ensure that the caretakers and the cleaners turn off the radiators thermostats at the end of each day. And we must collectively take responsibility and not leave radiators on when they're not in use. Insulating the exposed pipework that will prevent heat loss, and obtain prices for electricity heating in the bottom section of the building. And this would be fed off storage batteries that have gained through the energy through solar panels. If we do go electric, then the solar panels would be installed in the rear section of the roof facing the car park. The property manager said doesn't believe this is a heritage issue, which is due to the proposed panels not being visible from St Peter's Church Tower. And this test was carried out by the heritage officer. Assuming that point 3 does take place, we would have wall-mounted electric heaters in the main hall and the gallery, and crucially these units will also supply air conditioning in the summer months. That is very crucial. The old section of the building would remain on gas heating. The property manager's meeting with the electrical contractor at the end of next week to discuss solar panelling, the types of systems, costs and potential savings. There is a lack of insulation in the loft. He's been surprised. He looked in the accessible areas, and this is a major factor that does need to be addressed on both sides of the building. I won't go through the actions. You've obviously read this, but action on the loft insulation, he's put those clearly out for you 1 to 3. and he would like to use the ops team that we have here to fit insulation. Obviously, would have a saving on using contractors. We all know there's various types of windows in the old and the modern part of the building, and there is drafts. Well, it's very apparent there are drafts in parts of the building. We know that double glazing might be an option, but secondary glazing is a possibility. And hopefully that will be something he can progress with us as well. And again, the 3 action points there. But he's pointed out that secondary glazing is not cheap, but you have to invest to realise some savings. And with the lighting, he does have a meeting with the electrical contractor to discuss the current lighting system and talking about the replacement of lamps that can be retrofitted into the existing fittings. But he thinks that the lighting is not actually as pressing as some of the other measures that he wants to introduce that will perform part of his strategy. He's then talked about cost of electric and gas and given you some figures there about the present costs after consultation with the RFO. And then he's just asked if you could read this report and write more information before I shortly.
So I'll open up for comments in a second, but I'm just going to say, can I thank property manager for this? I thought it was an excellent piece of work, and it really demonstrates the value of having him as a member of our team, and if you can pass that on to him, definitely. And also, in terms of report, it's good to see that some small changes are included, which can sometimes give big returns, and that's great because it's not just about looking for the most exciting or expensive solutions. However, he has included solar panels, which in itself can be contentious, but I did do some searching myself around the internet when I saw that within the report, and English Heritage are very much in favour of listed buildings, etc., looking at the option of it. Not saying that they're promoting it, but they certainly have removed their reservations since November 2023, and do say it's something that should be looked at in terms of a cheaper form of energy. So they were just my observations to start with, but Councillor Black.
I think there's some very good things in here, and as I say, some of them are not massive costs, some are obviously longer term. The one thing that surprised me a little was the comment about still having to have caretakers going around knocking off radiators and so on. I don't know anything about the control systems, but it does seem a bit odd today that we haven't got a control system that'll do a better job at doing that from a central position. But it may be that the equipment is the way it's set up, but it's not the most reliable way because people forget.
Councillor Miles.
2 points. One is the income from hire fees this year is about 50,000. Another 10 or so if you include the indoor market. So let's say 60,000. The electricity and gas bill is 30,000.
36.
36,000. He thinks 30,000. So if you take out the staffing premises and these premises, the Guildhall is not really paying its way. I mean, it's a loss-making enterprise with those costs. So that's one point. And if perhaps we need a discussion about the use of this building longer term, because we and the staff could all be in modern premises with a heating bill of perhaps 1,000, 2,000 a year.
Yes.
It's just a thought. But let's say the annual heating and gas and electric bill was reduced to 15,000 as a result of some of these changes. Question for Karen really. If we had 15,000 a year extra to pay with, could that finance, let's say over 30 years, £500,000 of capital investment? Because we talked the other day about the boiler. Really, we should have a sinking fund that's accumulating over time for big items of expenditure.
However, I suppose we do have a sinking fund. We have the STBF itself is a sinking fund, because that's where we have money that we can draw down from. So drawing down to draw down.
It's a pot of
yes.
gold.
But sorry, I'll answer on behalf of.
So I suppose the question is,
The best way to handle a sinking fund is to invest it while you're not using it.
yeah, sure, of course.
Invest
But
wisely.
let's say you had savings of 15,000 a year on year, that presumably could fund the capital sum.
I would have to look into that.
Councillor
Yeah, I
Thompson.
just wanted to say a couple of things. One thing is, yeah, I think we should really look at what we've achieved. So getting the property manager in, which we said we'd do, and we had a couple of false starts on that, has been a great achievement. And we did say about the property asset manager, as it was going to be, was that a part of his role would be that he would have to earn his keep by introducing measures to make sure, one, that the hire of the Guildhall increases, which he certainly has been doing that. And the secondary thing was to do with items such as this, which was to improve the efficiency of it, which I think is quite good. I would just like to ask, though, that we don't miss any tricks, because earlier I said about events organisers looking further afield to fund things, and Sandwich Tollbridge Fund should be doing the same. So if there are any grants out there for insulation or lighting or changes or anything like that, then could we please, look further afield and not always think, oh, well, we've got to fund this ourselves, so it comes out of the Tollbridge Fund. From my point of view, I think the Tollbridge Fund should be for the benefit of the residents of the town, and unless the residents of the town are actually coming to use the Guildhall, they're probably sitting in their houses in St Bart's Road going, there's all that money there, and it's literally going on this building that I perhaps go in once a year, like that, to the annual town meeting.
Yeah,
So
the insulation definitely jumped out to me as surely there's avenues to.
it's
explore.
got to be something somewhere.
Yeah.
To
Councillor Anderson?
I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Okay. Councillor Pennington.
Yes, thank you. Just quickly, first of all, I was surprised there isn't any loft insulation, and that's a low-hanging fruit, and I should have thought we could get on with that fairly quickly. I'm not quite sure how far the other proposals might need planning permission with this being an old building. I had mixed views about using solar panels, and I wondered if air source heat pumps might be a better alternative, but I bow to the view of the experts.
And of course, we
Might
don't
tell
own
us.
this building, it is DDC's property, so there's an issue there to start with.
Correct.
Yes.
Councillor Oz, was there anything else? or-
Air source heat pumps, they're controversial, and they can be very noisy as well, in
Yes.
such a tight residential area.
I have remembered what I wanted.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
It's about the upfront capital cost of some of these proposals. Insulation, it seems to be cheap and relatively easy, but secondary double glazing for a building like this
Yes.
would be tens of thousands.
Yes.
And obviously we would have to consider how that
Yeah, it's fine.
is
Secondary-
mitigated by
secondary
future saving.
Secondary glaze.
Yeah.
Secondary glazing. I recently looked at secondary glazing for our house,
It's still expensive.
and it is very, very
I mean, it would not be practical in these rooms.
No.
Well, why not?
Well,
I know, you couldn't.
But it would be very, very expensive.
wonderful. Okay. All valid points. Councillor Carter?
just the last one is the offices where I work in London. One of the energy efficiency things was we had electric doors that opened and closed, and they opened and closed. Every time they open and close, of course, hot air goes from a hotter area to a colder area, and they were losing a lot of heat. We've just had I think it's 1 point something million refurbishment of the offices in the reception area, and they've actually put in, whether that probably wouldn't be possible here, but a revolving door, and apparently the heat retention is supposed to be like up to 75% better with a revolving door than doors that just open. And our doors downstairs, that is the factor there. So every time somebody presses the pad and those doors open, it's letting our.
Yeah.
If we had a lobby in that area with a second set of doors, it would retain the heat.
Yes,
And that's
yeah,
been missed.
actually that reminds me of another issue which has come up at Museum and Archives, but I don't think anything has happened. And that is that the museum door, that we need a glass door because, I
Correct.
mean, the museum guides,
Correct.
volunteers, sit in the freezing cold if the door is open. And the
Yeah.
visitors don't come in if the
Yes.
door is closed and the,
Yes.
and the guides are warm. So
Good
we really do need a glass
We do,
door.
yeah. Museum and Archives Committee. shall I suggest? Councillor Miles, do you want to last comments?
Well, two last points. It's the waiting room and showing how you can tastefully
it's a
provide
brilliant solution.
glass doors. I
Yes.
think the doors down here, I did the art exhibition here
Mm.
separately the other week, and those doors are fairly forbidding, you know,
Yes.
the big doors.
Yes.
When they were open, you get many more people coming in, but
Yeah.
obviously you're losing heat.
Yes.
So that's just the point. But I think, you know, I think we should congratulate the property manager for this report. It's, you know, raising the issue.
Yes.
And I look forward to more detailed proposals.
On that
and
note,
just-
we're asked to receive and note the report, so if somebody's happy
I'd like to
to
propose noting this interim report.
report, the further updates follow,
Yeah.
and seconded by Councillor Black.
I mean, if the further update could also have some estimates of the capital costs
Yes.
involved in some of these recommendations,
Good, yeah.
that would
point.
be helpful.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 8. So this was put in as a placeholder just in case anything came out of the discussions from the full meeting of the trustee on Monday. And this was in relation to Quilter Cheviot investments. We have touched on it in this meeting. We also did obviously touch on this a lot in the full meeting. If we're comfortable that we've got a way forward on this, then I don't propose that we spend too much time going over well-trodden ground. No?
Agreed.
Okay, agreed. It's fine. So final item, agenda item 9, date of time of next meeting next year, Wednesday the 22nd of January. Thank you very much.
Yes, you please.
Less than 2 hours.
Thank you, Karen, for all you have done.
Oh, yeah.
Street.